awesome. We'll bring him on in. Well, I want to start here because, John, you clearly know so much about the game. Giants, Dodgers. Before my dad passed, he thought that Mookie Betts, and this was going back to that Dodger-Giants playoff series, he goes, I haven't seen a guy take over a series like that. It reminded me of Willie Mays. Smaller guy, not the biggest dude in the room, but the way that he moves and glides, the arm, just the feel for the game, the way he takes an at-bat, the way the second he gets on base, he can control the running game, going first to third. My dad thought that the closest guy to Willie Mays that he had seen in his life was Mookie Betts. And Willie Mays he held in the highest of high regards. Now you're seeing Mookie Betts play shortstop. He played second base for an extended period last year. As somebody who I consider to be one of the media's foremost Willie Mays experts, what'd you think of that conversation regarding Mookie Betts and Willie Mays? John?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry.
Sweet.
Sorry, we podded you up there. What'd you think about the Mookie Betts, Willie Mays comp?
Well, that goes as far back as Boston. That's what Red Sox folks were saying as whatever he is, 5'10". Mays is listed in his playing days 5'10", 5'11". He swears he was 5'11", but I think it was more like 5'10". But you're right, 5'10", 180. I mean, that's Mookie. That's a guy who can play anywhere and combines great speed with great power. And the winnability factor is there. And it's like when you are a fan, no matter where you are in a stadium, you want to watch that guy. And that was the same with Mays, who was maybe more of an entertainer, and he tried to be. Betts plays the game right, and plays it with flair, sure, but not the way maybe Mays did with the basket catch and the cap flying off when he goes first to third or chases down a ball in the gap. But Betts has been doing it. People were saying, well, it was Betts and Mike Trout, and those were the two guys who were Mays comps. But Trout has shut down the running game. He was never a Gold Glove center fielder, and now he's injury prone. And, Mookie keeps playing. Mays kept playing. And, through age 39, 40, he played, 150-plus games every year. So Trout's kind of falling backwards, but Betts keeps going. And it was pretty electric out there last night. The problem is with Giant fans that the whole lower bowl seemed to be Dodger fans. A great majority, not everybody, but when the Dodgers did something, it was, holy cow, it's like a Giants playoff game in reverse. And after that final out, it was one of the loudest roars I've heard at that place, but the Giants didn't win. The Dodgers won the game, and after the final out, everybody, it was crazy to see from the press box that everybody in unison stood and cheered, and it was so loud. And Dodger fans kind of took over the place. And with Ohtani being around for 10 years, things might not change.
That's where I wanted to get at, John. Ugh. And I'm just looking again. We just had Jerry Harrison Jr. on, obviously, former player, does his pre and post for the Dodgers and their broadcast. But I'm just looking at the lineups last night. And just how can you not? Like, if you're a fan or a casual, like, you got Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman. MVP, MVP, MVP.
Yeah.
Juxtaposed out Mike Yastrzemski, Tyler Estrada, Matt Chapman. God love them. It comes up just a little small. So I just asked this to you. Obviously, you're in-depth on covering this team, both sides of the Bay. How far away are the Giants from even coming close to the Los Angeles Dodgers?
Well, I don't think they'll ever come close anytime soon because the Dodgers, I mean, the three guys you mentioned weren't homegrown.
No.
And they all came, whether it's trade with Mookie or free agency with Ohtani and Freeman. But those guys could carry a team. I mean, a lot of criticism has been thrown at the Dodgers, lower half of the lineup, the bottom three, whatever. But sometimes if you got Bird and McHale and Parrish, it really doesn't matter sometimes, what the rest of the team looks like. Obviously, pitching matters, and you're going to see Ohtani next year as a dual threat again. And right now, I mean, he went 2 for 5 last night. Okay, just kind of a regular 2 for 5, couple singles. But the speed was on display. And, even as a DH, guy who can't throw, he played catch last night. I guess he goes every other day in a light, very light throwing routine, playing catch as he rehabs this Tommy John. Imagine next year when he's going to be throwing 100 miles an hour every fifth day, not just, hitting 10 or 15 home runs in the first quarter mark of the season. It's not a cool thing. If you're a Giant fan right now, looking up at the Dodgers, it's been that way for a while, with the exception of 2021. That was kind of fluky. Everybody on that team had career years. That just doesn't happen. Then you have to go back, quite a ways before that. I mean, the Dodgers win that division every other year besides 21. So it's this might be a little rough stretch for the next 10 years. And thank goodness for Giant fans that they have the wild card, and they can say, well, what have the Dodgers done in the postseason? Well, they won one World Series in a shortened season during the pandemic year, where the Giants actually won 3 over 5. So those may be more bragging rights, but what have you done for me lately is the thing.
Well, it's interesting what you're saying here, because I was earlier kind of just contrasting the difference in strategy between the Baltimore Orioles post-2016 and the San Francisco Giants post-2016. Now, the Orioles didn't win 3 championships, and they didn't have guys locked in the way the Giants did. So there were some big differences. But the Orioles decided, all right, we're done with this roster. We need to really bottom this thing out. And the Giants have taken a different tact, where they're saying to themselves, our fan base, they can't support a 50 or 60 win season for multiple years in a row. We just can't do it. But I also don't see Giants fans supporting 75 win seasons and 80 win seasons. And I feel like we're now getting to the point where the Giants have to figure out which of the two they're willing to do. Either continue on this path of trying to go journeyman out and sprinkle into some young guys, or just rip the Band-Aid off and take a couple down years to maybe leap forward in 2 or 3. And I'm seeing over the weekend, I see some young players, and I feel like, man, I know they didn't look great. Tyler Fitzgerald gets picked off a second, but Ramos delivering, and I don't know if Casey Schmidt's a big league center shortstop every single day. I don't know. I don't know if Matos could be a legitimate center fielder, but seeing him in a home run was exciting. And I feel like we're not giving the Giants fan enough credit for sticking through thick and thin. I don't think they have the guts to peel the onion off and actually trade away these other guys and go all young. Do you?
No. And a lot of that, goes back to the Dusty years, the Felipe years, the Bochy years, and all under Sabian, all under Peter McGowan, Larry Baer, and now whoever's running the organization these days. It's, you can't really afford, even though the A's aren't really relevant anymore, you can't really afford in this market to do that like they did in Houston and other markets, Kansas City. Well, I mean, the Cubs did it, and that's pretty major of a market. But you talk about 75, 80 wins. I mean, they don't try to go 75, 80 wins. I mean, they were all in this year. I mean, at the beginning of spring training, I was thinking this team is going nowhere. But then they picked up 4 guys in spring training, 4 legitimate guys. 3 big free agents, and then the minor league signee Ahmed, who was going to play shortstop because Luciano just wasn't ready defensively. So at the end of spring training, I'm saying, okay, they just filled a bunch of holes with all these late signings, and I figured they would be a lot better than last year. But you look at the standings, they have the same record as the Oakland A's. And the A's, they had that 6-game win streak, but they've lost 7 of 9. I mean, that's how bad they are. And the Giants have the same record, and people are looking at the A's say, hey, they're a lot better than expected. And people looking at the Giants, exact same record, they're a lot worse than expected. I mean, I don't know if you can blame Zaidi right now because he brought these guys in. Granted, they all kind of fell to the Giants because they just weren't signed before spring training. A lot of the guys, Scott Boras clients. But he finally went out and spent a lot of money. Maybe the fans pushed him, maybe ownership pushed him, and those guys were available, so able to fill the holes. They did things a lot differently this offseason / spring training because they spent a lot of money. And they spent a lot of money the previous year, but maybe on second-tier free agents. So a lot of these guys, hey, this is a number 1 starter, a 30-home run DH, a 4-time Gold Glove third baseman. All these guys, and Lee, who maybe was the most exciting of the bunch coming in. But all these guys have not lived up to expectations, and now most of them are hurt. And I don't think you can blame management for that. Maybe you have to blame the players. And at first I thought they struggled early because they only had partial spring training. But now we're more than a quarter into the season, and you really can't make excuses. You can't blame it on injuries, just like you can't blame it on umpires. You need excuse-free baseball. And right now the Giants really aren't doing it.
Talking to John Shea, national baseball writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, the Shea Hey Kid, at John Shea Hey on Twitter. And John, your colleague over at the Chronicle, Susan Sussler, sat down with Farhan Zaidi and talked to him about the season and the future. And in that article, he mentioned there's a lot at stake this year. What would you say is at stake for the San Francisco Giants this season?
Well, one thing is his job. And if this record would be what it is now with Gabe Kapler, both of them would be on the hot seat. But once Melvin came in, Zaidi got an extension, so he's not necessarily on the hot seat right now. But that could change because, I think ownership is kind of running out of patience with this team. And, despite all the money spent, and it was significant, even though a lot of opt-outs with the Boros guys, they're just not producing. So a lot is at stake. In other words, if this thing doesn't work, first of all, you're going to see all these guys opt back in because they didn't have big years, which means you are still paying them and you still have to play them. But maybe we'll see some, Conforto's contract is out, and, Slater, some of these other guys that have been around a while. And if this season goes, the same way it's been going, then I think, there's a lot of things that could happen with some changes to the roster. They can only do so much because they do have guys under contract. And, it's just not a very athletic team. They're just last in stolen bases again, the stolen base percentage. The defense hasn't looked as sharp as it should have been. That left side of the infield, should have been much better. And with all these new guys, you just never know. Every game is going to be an adventure with a fly ball and a ground ball because these guys aren't major league tested. I'd love to see Ramos play every day. Matos as well. Give them a whole month and see what they can do. I think fans would love that. And that goes back to your question about, just let them play and see what happens. Rely on younger guys. And right now, unfortunately for the Giants management, they're going to have to rely on these younger guys.
All right, so last night, Kiki Hernandez steps up and hits a home run, and my uncle texted me first thing this morning, like all-time Giants killer. When it comes to Dodgers, right? Kiki Hernandez, he's on the list. I got Scott Hairston, Kiki Hernandez, Max Muncy. I throw Kershaw in there, Paul LaDuca. Who else am I missing on here?
Well, I guess I'd go back to Ron Say. He was the ultimate Giant killer. You look up his numbers against the Giants, and that was when the Dodgers were very good and the Giants weren't very good, throughout the 70s and into the 80s. And Say, the third baseman, the Penguin, he crushed the Giants. And anybody who went to Candlestick Park back in those days can tell you the same thing.
Got a tremendous mustache. I'm looking at him now as well. Look at that thing. Come on.
John, watching that team with that lineup, it's like we don't even talk about Will Smith would be the best player on the Giants by far.
He's so good.
They're so good. Max Muncy's an afterthought.
And he's a killer for sure.
Oh.
I mean, Brett Rooker would be their best player.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. What did I say to you, Spinoni, last night?
Well, speaking of them, real quick on the A's, this guy, Mason Miller, he hasn't really had a lot of opportunities this year. I mean, he is just en fuego. He has the highest velocity out of anyone in the major leagues. Whenever he comes on the field, it is must-see television. There were hearing rumblings, Ken Rosenthal, could he be dealt at the deadline? Sooner or later, though, the A's, I know they're going to Vegas, maybe. I know they're going to Sacramento next season. Sooner or later, you got to start keeping some of these guys, right, John? Like, moving on, Mason Miller, really?
Yeah, I kind of laughed at that. It was just silly. I mean, we're a month into the season. You're trading your best player who like has zero service time, and you'll have forever. I mean, can't the A's keep some guys? Can't they keep some good things? I mean, it's silly. I mean, why would you trade this incredible prospect / maybe all-star for prospects you don't know about? I mean, he's young, he's cheap, and he's going to be around for a long time. So trade him. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, will the A's trade him? I mean, they could do. Everybody's open to be traded in this organization, of course, but he's got almost no service time. So why would you move a guy for other guys without any service time? I mean, he's fun to watch too. I mean, if they want to be competitive at any level, they need him. They got to 500 with that 6-game win streak. I think they were 17-17, partly because this guy was shutting the door. When they got a 1 or 2 run lead after the 6th or 7th, it was game over. He's got 33 strikeouts in 16 innings. I mean, he makes great players look foolish.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks for coming on. John Shea, national baseball writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. Just tough days right now for Bay Area baseball. But we do have I have a Little League game, SFYBL playoffs, Mustang team.
Huge.
Today, Kimball, 5:30. So if you want to watch real good baseball, come check the City Flame team out at Kimball. I'll give you that one.
Yeah, and any Dodger fans there taking over the lower bowl?
I hope not.
I heard Shohei Ohtani's going to be in attendance. Maybe he's going to watch the game.
Oh, God.
Maybe have some bets on it.
There is rumor a San Francisco Giant will be coming to our practice, a former San Francisco Giant to our practice on Wednesday.
Wow, that's huge. It's big news, John.
Yeah. John, have a good one, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks. Have a good morning.
You too.
Thanks. Former SF Giant. That's T.